All right, hey guys, this is Ron from Ron's World, and welcome to Rockstar Paint Class. Today we're going to be painting something I call the Prince of Darkness, and as you probably guess, it's a tribute to the one and only Madman Ozzy Osbourne. So today we're going to be using Alpha 6 paint. Okay, I use this paint constantly, and I think what you're going to find, what I found anyway, is that it spreads really simply. All right, it's a lot easier to paint on a canvas with liquid acrylic as opposed to the tube acrylic. So that's why I like it. I hope you enjoy it as well. A couple other things. You have two brushes with you. One's a wedge brush, all right, and then one is a fine brush. I prefer the wedge brush for most of the painting, and then what I'll do is I'll go back and I'll clean up with the fine brush. If you find yourself that you like this brush better, again, there is no rules. You can basically do whatever it is that you're comfortable with. You know, and because of the luxury of having this on videotape, you can slow it up or speed it up, you know, as you need to follow along or to advance. So that's that. The other thing you're going to have is we need a cup of water. I use a little tiny plastic cup. Just fill it with water, and that'll allow you to clean your brushes off, or even to moisten the brush a bit to keep the bristles flowing. Sometimes the paint gets a little thick. And then last but not least, we have paper towels that I make a mess with. But these will use just to clean the paint off the brushes, to dry the brush out in between some colors that that we're going to want to do that with, and I'll tell you when I do that. The way we're going to paint, okay, is to get this to look like the canvas that you guys have seen that you've downloaded already, is I'm going to start with my lighter colors and work my way to the darker colors, all right, and then I'm going to do it again, usually twice, sometimes three times, depending on the color. Some of the colors won't go on as opaque as I like, so I'll have to let that dry, and then I'll hit it again. And what I'll do is, as we transition from color to color, I'll pause and give a little bit of a break so you guys can catch up and take your time to make sure you have it the way you want it to look. Which brings me to the next thing, is there is no rhyme or reason to the way this works. This is art, okay? There's no right or wrong way to do it. You can paint along with me, or you can take what I've given you and completely paint it a different way. You know, however you feel the best is what suits your style. This is your painting. So I'm just here to help you out. All right, so with that said, I put a little bit of yellow on the paintbrush, not a lot. All right, I do that for a reason. One is I don't want to glob up the paint on the canvas and make it really wet, because then it takes a while to dry. Also, is I kind of want to sketch it out where I'm going to put the color before I have to really commit to it. And if you'll ever painted before, you'll notice it's a lot easier to add paint than it is to take paint off. So we don't want to put a lot of paint on until we know we like the way it looks, and then we can go back and thicken up the lines or heavy it up a bit. So you'll see what I'm doing here is I'm just going to put a little bit of yellow on the top of his forehead, and you'll notice I don't mind if I get it on the black. We have black, we have a fine brush, and that's what we're going to clean it up with later. All right, I'd rather have that paint touch color than to leave a little bit of white. To me, that looks funny. All right, so I'm going to go ahead and I'm going to go over top that little bit of black. That doesn't bother me. All right, a little more paint. And then what I want to do is I'm going to come down here, and I'm going to go right along that line where his cheek would be. All right, and I'm going to put a little bit of a curve here. All right, you see I did that? That's going to give a highlight for his cheek. And I think you want to take notice where there's going to be white areas of canvas. Let's leave those white, because that'll show the highlights on his face, and that gives his face character. Okay, everybody's face has a little bit of a different highlight depending on how much fat or how much bone structure is there. So that's what makes Ozzy Ozzy. And we're going to want to make sure we keep those areas like that. So I want to keep that center of the cheek white. Okay, I'm going to come into this corner of the mouth and put a little bit of color here. All right, and then I'm going to take that straight down to there. All right, leaving that little bit for finger. All right, see how that is? That whole area there is yellow. Okay? I'm going to come up right next to this eyebrow here and put a little bit of yellow there. I'm going to put a little bit of yellow there. And again, if you're more comfortable with the fine brush, using the fine brush, feel free to use the fine brush. It doesn't make a difference. The paint will get on there one way or the other. All right, I'm going to do the same thing down this side of his face. All right, go over top of that. I'm going to create this little bit of a curve that'll represent the highlight, shiny part of his cheek, almost like the ball of his cheek. All right, you want to keep that there. And then we're going to do the same thing. We're going to color all this in straight down to the bottom here. And then we'll bring it right around underneath his lip. And I'm going to stop it right by that finger. Okay, just like that. Again, notice the highlights. Keep them white, all right? All this in here is white. Forehead, white. Leave it like that. That'll give his face that character. All right, we don't have a lot of detail on the fingers, if you notice. I didn't get carried away with it. But what I do want to do is make them look round, okay? And by doing that, we're going to put a little bit of color on one side of them. So again, you're leaving your highlights in the middle here. So you've got these areas where the tops of his fingers are. We're going to leave those white. So I'm just going to put color around one side of his finger. All right, and that'll help me to indicate that they're round. Okay, we don't want to draw a bunch of attention to them because the face is really what we're focused on for this particular picture. All right, so you see that? They already start to look round. They're already starting to get a shape to them. We'll do that on the rest of them as well. All right, along the shadow side. Under that one. And again, I'm not worried about getting it on the black. I'd rather have it on the black than leave a space. And we'll just color that in down there. Okay, so something like this. This is what we're looking at right now. There's not a lot of yellow on there, but it's enough to start to give it some shape. All right, in this area here, I just want to hit a little bit of color going on there. And then I think what I'll do is I'll come into the hair. I don't have a lot of paint on the brush, but what I want to do is I want to just come in here and make a couple little simple lines that define his hair. All right, and if you see what I did here is I actually let the paintbrush drag across the canvas, and you can see the black come through. It almost looks green. It's not a lot of paint. All right, and that I like the way that look. It gives it a little bit of a feathered look. Okay, if you're too heavy on the brush, that's going to look really, really like a solid color, and it looks funny. So we're going to do the same thing around the other side. Follow the line of his face, because that's how the hair would grow, right? And indicate some hair. You know, the lighter the better. You can always go back and add more. Maybe a little bit over here to show where it curls around his face. All right, again, you see the black that comes through. It's not a real heavy line, and that's what I'm looking for. All right, what I want to do is I want to bring a little bit of yellow down the side of his face, side of his nose rather. Let's do that on both sides. All right, shrink that up a little bit. Yeah, I kind of like that. And then what we'll do is we'll run that line right around the bottom here. Right on top of the black. Just follow along the perimeter of the black. So you just really, really wrap that nose in yellow. Okay, and we'll leave that like that. All right, so what I'll do now is I'll give a few minutes till you can catch up. Okay, take your time. Get all the yellow on there. Make it the way you want it, whether it's the fine brush or the wedge brush. And when I come back, we'll move on to orange. All right? Okay, so now that we've got the yellow on there, we've given it a couple seconds to dry. You know, again, we didn't have a lot of paint on there. It won't take long to dry. I'm not going to clean the brush. I'm just going to wipe that excess yellow off the paintbrush. All right, no need to put it in water. And then I'm going to get some orange on there. And what we're going to do with the orange is we're going to go over top of what we did with a lot of these areas of yellow. All right, starting with the cheeks. Okay, this section here. Now, if you can see really close, what I did is I didn't go right to the edge of the yellow. I left that yellow line there, all right, just a hint of yellow. And what that's going to do for me is it's just going to create a little bit of a subtlety, all right, so it's not such a hard line. And then I'm going to take this down here, so I'll show you, right to the corner. All right, something like that. So that's going to give a nice shadow under Ozzy's cheekbones. All right, I'm going to do the same thing on the other side. Leave a little bit of yellow line at the very top where you draw your curve. Bring that up into the corner, then straight down. All right, leaving that yellow bottom part there. All right, now for the bottom lip, remember we said about the white highlights. I'm going to leave a little bit of white in the center part of his lip, all right, to show that there's actually a light source on there. So I'll show you what that looks like in a second. All right, I'm going to come around here. All right, I'm going to leave that white area right like that. And then I'm going to bring this all the way up. All right, see that little white area there? I left that there on purpose, okay, because that's going to be the white highlight on the round part of his lip. All right, it gives the lip some texture and some depth. All right, continuing on where we put the orange on the fingers, same thing. I'm not covering all of the orange. I'm just cutting a little bit where it meets the black. All right, keep the orange on the top part, or keep the yellow on the top part, I'm sorry. Just where the orange, where the yellow meets the black, I'm going to give it a hint of orange, and that's going to create a little bit more shadow on those fingers. All right, this one too, all along the bottom. Just a little bit of it. Get it up in there. And again, I'm not worried about covering some of the black because I'm going to go and I'm going to fix that at the very end. All right, and that one I'll put a little heavier shadow on there because it's underneath. Okay. Now, same way like I told you earlier how we did the yellow in the hair, let's put a little bit of orange in there as well. So we're building up the texture in his hair. See how dry the brush is? You can hear it scraping on the canvas. There's not a lot going on there. All right, and it gives it that really, really textured look that sort of indicates hair. You know, so that's the purpose. We're cheating a little bit there, but that's how we do things. See? A little bit there. Maybe a little bit on top. Now you don't want to cover all the black, so we're going to leave a lot of that. But I just want to show that there's a little bit of texture, there's stuff going on there. Okay? So I'm going to put that brush in the water. All right, so I'm going to clean that off. All right, we'll clean that one off for a little bit of time there. And I'm going to put it aside. So now I'm going to take out my fine brush. All right, get a little water on that. And what I want to do now is I'm going to go to the blue. So while the orange and the yellow are drying, I want them to be completely dry before I touch them again. And I'm going to go over to that light blue that you have on your palette. Okay? And these white areas around the eyes, I'm going to paint those all light blue. So this is sort of the paint by number part of our program here. Just basically paint all those white areas blue. All right, and make sure you fill them all in too, so you don't see any white around between the blue and the black. You want to cover all of that. And again, if you get a little bit on the black and you want to fix that later, that's why we have the black paint. We can fix that later. All right, we get the eyelid, little section there. We'll do the same thing with the other side. All right, and I'll put this one here in blue. I'm going to leave those little two dots where the whites of his eye, I'm going to leave those white for the time being. All right, we'll see how that looks in a bit. All right, and while I've got that blue, what I'm going to do is I'm going to take it, I'm going to run a little blue line right up the side of his head where his forehead meets his hair. All right, a little line there, and I'm going to do the same exact thing on the other side. All right, just put a little bit of white there. Just like that. All right, I think that looks kind of cool. I like how that frames his face like that. All right. Moving on a little bit. I don't have a lot of blue in the hair, but again, I want to keep the same colors running throughout. A little bit of hints of blue in the hair. Okay. And then what I want to do, again, there's not a lot of paint on the brush. So where he's got his, looks like he might have a blazer on there, instead of leaving that totally black, I want to put a little bit of color in there. So I don't want a lot of paint, so you see me wipe some of it off. So I'm just going to put a little bit of paint, and then I'm going to smear that around. All right, just to show that there's some texture, there's some stuff going on there. All right, maybe a little bit up here. All right, under here. All right, it'll just to indicate that there's something going on inside there. Maybe we put a little bit of a color on top of that in a bit. All right, but I just want texture. All right, I just want to indicate texture. So it's not just a subtle, not just a stark black area. All right, something like that. All right, maybe some over here. Okay. All right. So finish up your blues, color in all these areas up here. Make sure you fill those in really good. And again, don't worry about getting any blue on the black. If you want to fix that later, we'll fix that. So I'll give you a few minutes to catch up with that, and we'll be back in a minute. Okay, so now that those colors are probably a little bit more dry, what I want to do now is I've got some red on the fine brush. Okay, and I'm going to come in and I'm going to define a little bit of this cheekbone here. So right straight from that line, okay, up to here, almost just that little fatty part of his face. We're going to paint that red. All right, so if you can see what I did there? It's just that section. I didn't fill in the whole thing red. Just that little jowly part. Again, don't tell Ozzy I said that. But there it is, there in the corner. Okay, just a little hint of red there. And that'll go on nice since that orange and that yellow are dry. That should flow on there pretty nice for you. All right, same thing with the lip. Right here on the side of this lip, I'm going to put red. And I'll bring it right down to this section here. I don't want to paint the whole lip red. Just basically the sides and the corners. I'm going to do the same thing on that side there. Okay? Gives it a little bit of, in the corner of his mouth, a little bit of shadow. The red will give us some shadow. All right? And then what I'm going to do is I'm going to take some red and I'm going to put it in the hair. All right? On that side of his face there. All right, I'll come over here, I'll put some here. Same way we did the hair before. Okay, not a lot of paint. Let that dry brush come through. Okay. Some down bottom. Same thing on this side. All right, so we don't have a lot of red on there, but just enough to make the rest of those colors pop, okay? It warms it up kind of nicely. I like the way that looks. All right, so now let's retire that brush for a minute. So we'll clean him off pretty good so it doesn't harden on us and wipe that off. All right, and I'm going to go back to our wedge brush. And while the inside of the face is drying, I'm going to come into that purple now. And I want to paint the entire background of this canvas purple. So this is where we're going to use a substantial amount of paint because all of the white around his head is going to be purple. So you're literally just like painting a house, just color it all in. And we'll come right up to his hair. I think the purple background on this one, I mean, if you notice some of my other paintings, we use usually the black or a white background, but I think the purple on this one, for some reason, it brings the rest of the colors out, and I thought it was a nice complementary color. That's why I chose it. So I think it looks pretty good. If you don't want to make it purple, you don't have to make that purple. You could have left it white, or you could have even colored it black. And my canvas here has a white border. I don't believe yours does, the one that was sent to in the kits with you guys. So you'll just excuse my white border around it, but I'll paint this in to show you how it looks. And again, this liquid acrylic paint flows very nicely, so you should have some really nice coverage with this. If it looks a little streaky, like we said with the other colors as well, you can always go back and go over it twice to make it more solid, but it seems to be going on mine pretty well. And make sure you cover it right up to the hair. We're going to put a little bit of white around there, but I'd rather paint the canvas with the paint and then go back and add white as opposed to leaving the canvas white. So make sure you fill that in. I'm just going to take mine down to there. All right, like these little areas here, make sure we color those in. All right. So now there's a considerable amount of paint on that. You're going to want to let that dry for a second before we go putting any other color on around that. Otherwise, you're going to smear it with your hand. And that'll make a mess. So let's let him dry for a second. All right, I painted mine kind of fast. So take your time. And while you guys are painting that and while it's drying, I'm going to clean that off of that brush there, and we'll let that sit for a second. So give it a few minutes to continue that, and we'll continue in a second. All right, so while the purple's drying, what I'm going to do now is just a couple little subtleties, all right? I got the darker blue, and I'm just going to hit some darker blues in the hair. All right, maybe some down where we put that color in the shirt. Just an indication. And again, excuse the bottom part there, okay? The image you guys have is basically fills the canvas. Mine doesn't. It's a little smaller. That's why I didn't fill that in. All right, maybe some blue up here. All right, not a lot, just to indicate that. All right, we'll clean that brush off. And now what I want to do is take the fine brush, all right, put some black on there. And this is where we're going to clean up. Now everybody's is going to be slightly different. Okay, so where I got color on top of the black, everybody's is going to be a little different because obviously we're exactly where my black, where I did color on top of my black, isn't going to be where you did yours. But this is the time now where you take that black paint and go back and bring the original black that I gave you back. Okay, all those lines that were on the canvas before, all right, you're going to make sure you bring those back and make them nice hard black lines, especially around the sides of his face, all right, because that jawline is inherently Ozzy and we want to make sure we keep it. All right, so clean those back up again. The little lines in his face, bring those back as well. Any place you covered black you're going to want to see that black again. And this will take a little bit of time, so don't rush it. All right, and if the paint is still wet, you might want to wait and let that part dry. You know, up in the eyes. Get those little black sections back again. You know, take your time with this because the cleanup is important. It'll bring back, so when you stand back and you look at this, you'll actually see the hard edges, and you're going to want to see that because if you don't have them there, it just kind of gets a little blurry and it looks funny, especially when you start to mix different colors. You know, you want to have a bit of a contrast. You don't want to have it just look like it's a blend of color because that'll defeat the purpose of what you're trying to do. All right, make sure you get them all. I gotta get this one here. There's a little bit of black there. All right, take your time, clean them all up, make sure you get them all. Okay, and then when you're done with that, we're going to rinse that brush one more time, and let's rinse it pretty good now because from the black we're going to go to white. So if there's black on that brush, you're not gonna have a true white, and that'll make the gray, it'll look dirty. Okay? So grab some white on that brush. All right, and then let's do this. Let's go little dots in his eyes. We're gonna go one there, and we're gonna go one right there. All right, right in the middle there. All right, that gives him life, a little character. We want that. In the hair, I want to put some white, same way we did it before. Right, not a lot, just to show some highlight. All right, you don't want to go painting over the colors you got in there because the colors are kind of cool. Okay, but what I do want to do is I like the way this looks with a rim of white around it. So let's go right around the black part of his hair. All right, where the black meets the purple. Let's make it white. Sort of like he's backlit. Right? You can bring that right down to his shoulder too. Okay. And what we got over here, he's got he must have had rings on in the picture that I used for this. So what I did is I just grabbed the white and hit a little bit of dots almost, all right, on two sections of his hands. See that? Just random stuff. It basically looks like he's got some highlight thing going on there, but it's not very descriptive. All right, a little bit of, let's put some white in there. All right, and you can add as little or as much white as you want. I mean, we can actually trim the entire thing in white, or you could stop with it. You know, I like the way it looks against there for this particular painting. I think the white around the hair is pretty fun. All right, it gives him a little bit of separation against that purple. You know, it looks something like that. Okay. All right. So I think I'm pretty much done, but again, it's up to you guys. Take your time, rewind the video, go back, slow it down, do what you want. You can add more color to it if you want, or you can call it a day. I want to thank everybody for joining me today. I had a lot of fun doing this. I hope you did too. Please check out rockstarpaintclass.com if you want to paint some other guys. We're going to be loading them up pretty soon. And please share your portraits with us. I want to see how they look, and I'm sure everybody else does too. Hashtag Rockstar Paint Class, and we're on Instagram at Rockstar Paint Class, as well as Facebook Rockstar Paint Class. So have a great night, guys. Take care.